Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with the Jagmaster General. Today I'll be taking the political compass test. As I'm a complete expert in every category, my questions will always be correct. Feel free to guess where I'm going to land, or which quadrant, or yeah. We'll start off with, if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational companies. So, some people would say yes. I would disagree. Not that I don't think humans should benefit, but I don't think without corporations benefiting, people aren't going to actually do anything about it. Like, corporations aren't going to care or try to help if they're not going to get anything to get. I'd always support my country, whether it's right or wrong. Absolutely not. That's dangerous. You should be able to look at your country's actions and realize if it's good or bad. You don't have to always vilify them, but you shouldn't look at something like putting kids in cages and say it's a good thing, or it's justified. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I disagree. I think being proud of where you're from is not a bad thing. I think nationalism and ultranationalism is an issue. But, like, being proud to be an American, or Dutch, or German, I don't think is an issue, as long as it's not a hatred for those who aren't you. Our race has many... No. That's just no. I'm not even going to touch that. YouTube won't like that. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I disagree. I mean, not strongly disagree, but I think that's a dangerous mindset. Military action that defiles international law is somewhat justified, or sometimes justified. I strongly disagree. I think if you don't have legitimate precedent for any kind of military action, I don't think it's good. Because if you can break it, someone else will, and then international law will mean nothing. There is a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. No, I mean, yes, but like, you are watching someone take a political compass test, so clearly. People are ultimately divided more by class and nationality? Absolutely. Actually, divided by. Disagree. I think we're divided more by nationality, because I think there is class consciousness, as some old German guy would say. Is controlling inflation more important than controlling unemployment? It's a tough one. I would say yes, because everyone can be employed, but if their money doesn't mean anything, it's not going to help them anyways. And should corporations, or should the government regulate environment? I think so, to some extent. I don't think full corporate, like, down to how many trees they can cut down or anything, but I do think there needs to be some guidelines, because companies will do anything to make a quick buck, as others would say. From each according, yeah, that's the basis of Marxism, and I kind of don't agree with that. Yes, I think a free market allows for freer people. I think there are downsides to a freer market, but I think the more people are able to actually have control of the economy, the better off they tend to be. Say what you want about the current system, but I'd rather be now than a serf in medieval Europe. Is it a sad reflection of our society that something as basic as drinking water is now branded, bottled, and consumer product? Yeah, I'd agree, because let's be honest, basically every water tastes the same except Dasani. Dasani tastes gross. We all know this. But I don't think it should be. But I think the fact that they have like different brands dedicated just to water is kind of weird. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I disagree. I don't think one person should own everything, but I think the ability to eventually, hopefully, buy your own house or your own little cabin in the woods and have some place to call your own is idealistic. I think it's nice. Like, even if it isn't the best house, you should still be proud that you were able to put something to your name. It's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to the society. I agree to some extent. There are definitely some who haven't done too much to earn their money, like the Kardashians. I don't know what they did to earn their money other than be the Kardashians. But I don't think there's anything wrong with people having large fortunes, but ideally your money should come from something good that you're doing. It doesn't have to be perfectly good, but like Steam, for example. They're a monopoly basically on the PC gaming market, but no one cares because they run quite well. Valve makes a lot of money, but none of the customers are mad about that. Protectionism is sometimes justified or necessary. No. Well, disagree. That's why I disagree. There are certain situations where a tariff on a specific good or a specific or like a sanction on a country could be justified. I don't think it's ever necessary though. There's definitely, I think tariffs and that kind of thing get in the way of the free market and get in the way of choice because the Chinese electric cars, for example, that are really cheap because the Chinese government subsidizes them, are almost impossible to get in the West because we put such high tariff rates on them because they would outcompete Tesla and other companies. The only social responsibility of a company should be delivered profit to its shareholders? No. I think that personally, I'm not even a big fan of shareholders. I think they tend to ruin companies by making them short-sighted, but I think a company has a responsibility to make a product worthy of customer consumption. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if I'm buying a Doc Brown's cheeseburger or Doc Brown's steak, there should be an expectation that the quality is worth the price. Or you can even argue our environmental responsibility, but that's not going to happen. That's why up here we need the regulations. The rich are too highly taxed? I disagree. On paper, yes, but as anyone who knows anything about politics knows, it's all too easy to wiggle out of that. But I do think, I think everyone's overtaxed, but I don't think the rich specifically are being harmed by that overtaxation. Because I think our government has a spending problem, not a cash problem. I think if we gave the government an extra $10 trillion a year, they would still find a way to blow it. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher medical care. I agree. It's a sad truth that I have to agree to that, but I think everyone should be able to get treatment. Do not get me wrong, but I do think it's a little unrealistic to expect every clinic to have the exact capacity. And I think if you're truly hurt, actually, I'm going to change it to disagree. I think healthcare, I'm not sure how I feel about healthcare specifically, but I do think everyone should have access to the same care. At least some way. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Absolutely. I'm not a big... Actually, I'll go to agree, not strongly disagree. Or strongly agree. I'm not a big fan of government intervention, but I think if a company is intentionally trying to pull the rug out over the eyes of a consumer, they deserve to be punished. And sometimes customers can't do that efficiently. A genuine free market requires restrictions on ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. Agree, but just faintly. I think that I definitely think there needs to be some way to check that, but I think that could come from the people and not the government. Abortion when a woman's life is not threatened should always be legal. No. I think the government has zero right to tell you what to do with your body. If you want to get an abortion, cool. If you want to sell your kidney, cool. The government should not have a right to regulate your body. Because if they can say, no, you can't have an abortion, they can say, hey, give X person your liver. Because that is just a right we cannot let them take. All authority should be questioned. I agree. I don't think it should be questioned rudely. But I think that authority needs to be questioned or else they become complicit and they become kind of, I don't want to say tyrannical, but they become aggressive. An eye for an eye is a terrible life philosophy. The whole quote is an eye for an eye, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I don't think revenge... Well, I'm not saying I'm ever guilty of trying to get revenge or whatnot, but I don't think revenge is a good way to have a mindset, especially not in the governmental level. I agree. I'm a history major. I love museums and theaters and all that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's the taxpayers' job to hold them up. If people like it, they can donate themselves and or private investors, like private sponsors like we have for a lot of things. It's just because if the government And also, the government props it up. The government can say what's in the museums, and I think that's a dangerous precedent. Yeah, I don't think school should be compulsory or should be compulsory. I think up till high school they should be, because little kids need to be trained and learn. But I think if a high schooler at that point wants to drop out of high school, they should. I don't think anyone should. I think education's important, but I don't see why sending the kid to jail or the parents to jail for the kid not showing up to school is a good policy. Yeah, no, all people have their rights, but it's better for all of us if we sorts of people should. No, I don't think segregation's ever a good idea. I think echo chambers are dangerous, and I enjoy meeting all kinds of people, different religions, different races, different ethnicities, different sexualities. It's diversity is a strength for humans. We just have to learn to get along, and we get so focused on the few differences we can't find the greater person underneath. Good parents sometimes need to spank their kids. So I'm gonna disagree. I'm not saying if you spank your kid you're a bad parent, but I think a trait that any good parent should be able to tell their kid why something was bad or why they did something wrong without having to resort to physical violence. I know people who would say hitting your kid at all makes you a terrible parent. I don't agree with that, but if you can't explain to your kid why doing X or Y or Z was a bad thing without relying on physical force, you're not a parent, you're a bully. And I think that's a great way to make a kid hate you, or can hate you, or make them not want to be around you when they're an adult. If you always go to violence, but I think sometimes it might be needed, but it should be once or two times ever. It shouldn't be a constant tool. I also strongly agree. I think secrets are not inherently bad. I think children keep secrets. Don't know exactly what age we mean by kids, but I know teenagers definitely do. High school, But I don't think not telling your parents everything is a bad thing. Obviously, if it's something serious, it is. But society has these kind of polite secrets that you're supposed to keep. If someone asks you how your day is, you're not supposed to say, "Oh, it's terrible." You're supposed to say it's good. There's just certain things that it's better off not telling them. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal. I agree. I think it actually goes further than that. But I don't think if someone is smoking pot, they should be sent to prison or rehab. Now, if they were doing something else during that, they were smoking weed and then got caught driving or work high, is different. But if you're just smoking a little bit of pot at your own house or somewhere that's not public, I see no inherent issue with that. The prime function of schooling should be to equip future generations to find a job. I disagree with that. I think finding a job is important, but I also think a liberal arts education is to teach us to be better citizens of the republic and to be more critical thinkers, not just do this, that, and the other thing. It should teach you how to think and how to understand and how to rationalize. I think getting a job is important too, but most jobs, unless you're going into a higher level college or certifications, which you'll get there, most jobs can teach you simple job training in a couple months. And that's your hard jobs. Simpler jobs can be taught in weeks, days. No. I don't think people with inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. I think there needs to be some way to make sure the child can be taken care of. So, there should be someone present to help them. But I think saying you have X, Y, or Z, so you're unfit to be a parent is dangerous. It's something that's not acceptable for the government to tell you. But like I said, there definitely needs to be some kind of safety net to make sure the kid can be taken care of in case of issues. But the most important thing for a child to learn is discipline. No. Discipline is, or to accept discipline, sorry. Yet no. I think responsibility is more important. Learning to respect, but discipline. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that. I would agree with that. There are no savage or civilized people; it's just different cultures. But there are some potentially less civilized practices and cultures. I don't think any culture is inherently X, Y, or Z is better or worse. But if your culture has child marriage or forced marriage or slavery, in some places in the world still do, that's bad. But I think to villainize an entire culture is painting an unrealistic portrait. Hmm. Depends on what it means by this. Like, yeah, if John down the street got a high school diploma and is just sitting in his basement watching YouTube all day, maybe not, but depends on the opportunity too. Like, is he expected to work 40 hours a week to not even be able to afford rent every month? But I don't think just because you refuse to work. I mean, it depends on what you mean refuse to work. Like, are they refusing to get a McDonald's 9 to 5, or are they refusing to do anything productive? Because as long as they're providing value to something, whether it's they're making art that they can't sell, but maybe not society as a whole support, but they should still have some support. Yeah, no, I don't think it's better to just not think about being sad. I think that's a really bad idea. Yeah, I think you need to actually go through your emotions. And I disagree with the fact that first generation immigrants can never be fully integrated. There will always be differences, but it doesn't mean that a first generation can't. And I mean, I guess it means integrated. Because, like, yeah, they're never going to assimilate and abandon their culture, but I don't think they should. But, like, they can definitely, like, I've met quite a few immigrants, first generation, who are, like, the most American you can think of. They're, like, proud, they're loud, they, like, always talking about their freedoms. But, yeah, I think you can. No. What's good for most successful corporations is never, or is not always ultimately good for all of us. Ideally, in a perfect world, yes. But, something tells me if Amazon did what was best for them, their employees never would leave the wage cage. So, no. I disagree. I think broadcasting institutions are necessary. I mean, ideally they should be independent if you're getting federal funding, but if there's no federal broadcasting, you're going to get people who either can't afford information or buy it from a certain company that tells them what to think. Oh, there's 2 more pages, Jesus. Yeah, I'm just going to go rapid fire on this one. Our civil liberties has been being taken away in the names counters terrorism. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that I mean, could call that an advantage, but I would rather live in an unstable, slow democracy than a stable, quick dictatorship. Election age makes no. The idea that only those who are wrong should need to worry is not true. If the government has a right to do all of that, it's only a matter of time before they decide one of your activities is dangerous. I don't like the death penalty. I think it's intense. I think it's I'm not saying there aren't a few crimes that are worthy of death. I don't think it should be an option for most things. Yeah, no. I don't think in a civilized society one must always be obeyed and person bullied should always be commanded. I think that's I don't like that mindset. I think you should respect your boss and like follow like orders, but I don't think they should be directly obeyed. Like if they're doing something wrong or they're an idiot, don't tell them that personally, but like try to suggest different outcomes. And don't just demand things of your subordinates. Show some compassion, some common sense. Yeah, I don't like abstract art. I don't think it's actually. I'll put agree. No, I'll put disagree. I don't really like abstract art. I think it's still art. I mean, anything's still art. The banana on the duct tape made like $1 million, but like, I don't like abstract art. Strongly disagree. I think in criminal justice, rehabilitation is ideal. I think there are some people you can't rehabilitate. The things you two would get demonetized for saying, but I think most criminals, from your common thief to even, other things, can be reformed given the opportunity. Like Sweden, for example. And, well, I answered that up here, so, I disagree. I think they make more money, and I think if you equate just value to money, I think that's correct, but I don't. I mean, obviously, if it says writer or artist, I'm assuming it means successful. Not saying anyone who's an artist or a writer who isn't making money isn't an artist or writer. But if you're not, comparatively to a business person or manufacturer making goods, but like if you're a successful or even published or sold, you're important. You matter. No, that's a very alt-right or traditional view on women, and I don't support that. If you want to be a homemaker, awesome. Or as my grandma used to call it, not civil engineer, domestic engineer was the term she used. But I don't think you should say this isn't the 1930s anymore. You can't say women get back home. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate. I agree to an extent. I don't think we should hamper ourselves internationally to do so, but we need to start waking the fuck up. Oh, waking up. Sorry, you didn't hear that. No, I disagree. I don't think you need to make peace with the establishment in order to be an adult. I think that if the establishment, because it depends what the establishment is. If the establishment's bad, you shouldn't make peace with them. No, astrology's not real. I'm sure to get a lot of comments about my stance on astrology. Disagree with that too. Strongly disagree with that. You can be moral without being religious. Religion gives you a nice framework, but to say you without religion are inherently bad is objectively wrong. And if the only reason you are moral is because of a list of rules, you're not moral. You're trained. So I agree to an extent. I think Social Security is poorly optimized, and was it a New York Times, Washington? It was some article I read a while ago, and it was if you just put your money from your Social Security that you take out of your check every month and put it into a savings account, you'd end up with more. Actually, let me disagree with that because I don't think charity's better. Because I don't think charities really work. But I think Social Security is a problem. Yeah. I don't believe too much in luck to the extent that I think it's a big force. But sometimes you just do get unlucky, and sometimes you happen to get unlucky a lot. Not every problem is for people who have is caused by bad luck, but sometimes a bird craps on your shoe. It just happens. And I disagree. I don't think schools should teach religion at all. Separation of church and state. I disagree. I think sex outside of marriage is not an issue as long as you're both consenting adults. Cheating is bad, obviously, but I don't think just shaboinking outside of a few vows is inherently evil or anything. Same sex, yeah, I agree. As long as you're both stable, as long as you're both of caring nature, no problem. You should not be excluded from having a kid. Oh, the P word. I think, yeah. As long as it's adults, it's consenting, it should be legal. I don't see why it shouldn't be. I think we have somewhat of a moral obligation to make sure it's not in schools or anything. But at the same day, Google exists and kids aren't stupid. So, I completely agree. What happens in a bedroom stays in the bedroom. The government has no business knowing what happens in your house at all. What is kids feel naturally homosexual even? What does that? I disagree. Is it saying people aren't born gay? Because that's not true. But that's some weird termage there. That kind of confused me. I kind of agree to an extent. I nothing wrong with sex positivity, but I do feel like people tend to go a little more in depth with their sex lives than people in the past. I don't know if that's a problem per se. It's just leave me out of it. Do what you want. Don't Let's see where I stand, everyone. Where I'm actually changed quite a lot. A couple years ago, I took this and I was more in like the here range. But yeah, hope everyone had fun. Glad to see that I'm a left-leaning libertarian now, I guess. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see y'all in the next one.